Hello there. Hello and welcome again to my channel. If you've been here before, I guess you already know me from the video where I talked about my BSOD problem. And if you don't already know me, well, get ready because it's gonna be a bumpy ride. So, what has been up with me lately? For one, I haven't been using Windows. There's a window right there, but I don't use Windows on my computer. I actually use something completely different. It's called Linux. And what Linux does is, basically being a better version. And actually, it's not a version of anything. It's an operating system that functions way better than Windows if we're going to be really straight about this. And it really kind of, well, at the same time, it kind of depends on you being good enough, knowing the quirks and tweaks. What? I can't make up idioms. I'm a linguist. I can't make up idioms. Depends on you knowing every nook and cranny in your computer, in how you use your computer. Like, you have to get used more to not simply point and click, but to also use commands on the terminal, on the what you you Windows users call the command prompt, which you don't use. And in spite of all this, I just thought to myself, well, is this better than having constant blue screens of death and having to tweak a freshly bought motherboard just to be able to use the computer? Yes, yes, absolutely yes. Having to use the terminal, how bad is it gonna be? You have to just, if anything, you can always Google what you need to do. If you can always look up what you need to do on Google. Like, the commands are always there for you to find. If you want to fix a game, since of course you can use a compatibility layer called Proton, if you have to fix it, there's always like a very detailed fix on how to use certain commands and certain, terminal commands to run it and such. But of course, setting up your OS for the first time if you're using Linux, and by the way, Linux isn't just one thing. I'm using a distribution of Linux called Pop OS. It isn't the best, but I guarantee it's actually much better than having to use bloated spyware on my computer that tells me what to download every single time, and actually tells me to restart my fucking system every time I turn it on. No, in here, you don't have to restart your system every single time. You only have to restart your system when a major update comes up, which is rarely. Not rarely, every 5 months? Yeah, that's a deal that's a deal I can work with. I don't want to be using an OS that forces me to restart, of all things. By the way, even when you do the major update, you are allowed to finish your work before you restart. In Windows, it doesn't give a shit. While you're working, oh, sorry, here's a permanent sign, like a permanent, prompt that tells you your system will restart in X seconds, and you have nothing to do about it. Hey, fuck you, Microsoft. I didn't pay. Oh, by the way, I didn't pay. just so we're clear, the entirety of Egypt, at least Egypt. I'm gonna be talking about Egypt. Even governmental organizations use pirated versions of Windows. That's how bad your system is. It's not even worth paying money for if it's that bad. Yeah, so what about games? I guess the major argument that comes up every time you talk about the difference between Linux and Windows is Windows can do games. By the way, Linux can also do games. Not every game, of course. We know PUBG doesn't work on Linux. That's one of the known games to not work on Linux, which, hey, I don't expect someone who plays PUBG to, be able to use Linux. But, yeah, that's a hot take. That's a very hot take that I will probably get slammed for. But then again, Linux is able to play a lot of games, a lot of the, known and loved games. Skyrim, Oblivion, Elder Scrolls fans, where you at? Witcher. Saints Row games are actually native on Linux. Hitman games, at least the first Hitman game is native on Linux. Every single Tomb Raider game from the newer ones is native on Linux. How do you feel about that? Of course you feel happy. I guess. A lot of the more known, better, a lot of the more known games are good, run really well on Linux, including the Mortal Kombat games and Injustice. Of course, even despite the Nouveau, of course, you have to, tweak the quality a little. But then again, I am happy with my games on Linux. Then I don't feel that the performance has diminished. In fact, the performance has increased on Linux because it doesn't use much resources. So that being said, have I ever actually needed Windows at any point? No, I didn't need it. I just needed someone to tell me, hey, there's this cool thing called Linux that you could try and see if it makes your computer experience a lot better. There's this thing I keep saying, I have learned stuff about Linux in 4 months than I've learned about Windows in 20 years. That is not an exaggeration. I'm speaking from the heart here. I believe that, of course, all things considered, Linux is hard to use overall. Even if you're just migrating from what they call a Windows user-friendly distribution like Linux Mint, you would still have to deal with the fact that, of course, going through Linux is hard, and sometimes the GUI, the GUI, will not be of great service to you sometimes. So you have to work your way around. It's all about tinkering. If you want a distribution that is tinker free, maybe use Fedora Silverblue. Other than that, most of the time you have to tinker. Oh, sorry. Oh, just anyway. Most of the time you have to tinker. Most of the time you have to be working on fixes on your own to make your computer work if it fails to work. It really kind of depends on having some sort of, intermediate knowledge on how to use a computer. Because of course, people who use their computer to play games, play solitaire or whatever, and browse the internet and all that, and use Microsoft Office, it's easy to use Windows. But there are distributions that allow you to do that, Linux distributions that allow you to do that, while also not making you want to go back to Windows, like Linux Mint. Then again, you don't have to do much to install these. Oh, hey, yeah. Have you heard? Most Linux distributions that I know of, except Fedora Silverblue, you plop it on a flash disk, and when you put that flash disk into your computer, you realize, hey, I can try the operating system without actually having to install it. Like, it's magic. Like, you don't have to install it. You can try it off of the disk, and it's still gonna be fast if you have a good enough computer, of course. I mean, not good enough. Like, the average computer can do that. You try out distros, you see which one tickles your fancy, and then when you finally decide you want to install it, it tells you, it helps you around. But then again, Windows, when you install Windows, all you gotta do is, plop it on the hard drive before doing anything else. Because you don't have the opportunity to try. It is, immutable. Windows is immutable and everything, but not immutable enough to actually function after you install it, because sometimes things can go wrong when you install it. I've seen that myself, and then it becomes unusable until you reinstall the OS once again. Now, does that make any of us happy? No, it doesn't. If you're the kind of user who will find it irritating to do a bunch of terminal commands and tweak your system in a very advanced manner that goes beyond simply point and click, well, I can show you the way. But then again, I would advise that if Windows does that for you, then go ahead and do it. I have my own, inhibitions, my own problems with Windows that I don't want to impose on anyone else. So if you're using Windows and you're fine with it, go ahead. But I'm just advising you, if you want to do the things you already do on your computer, Linux can do just that. And that's pretty much it. I don't know what else to say about this. It's just my opinion on using Windows, It's just my opinion on using Linux for 4 months now. And to be honest, it may not be for everyone, but it is the kind of OS we all deserve. Microsoft has been crapping up its, OS with a lot of bloat and spyware and all kinds of unwanted shit in its own OS. So I feel like people are only using that because it's all they've known. It's the thing they've grown up using. Some people have actually grown up using Linux, so not everyone has grown up using a Windows computer. So when you put it like that, you think of it as maybe if I give Linux a try, it's not like a red pill where you finally see the truth as soon as you use Linux. No, it works in the manner that, hey, I think I can make this work by learning about it. It's an OS that makes you learn. So yeah, if you want to give Linux a try, go ahead. There's always, guys, the Linux community is always helpful and will help you use your OS, your desired distribution the way you like. But all the Windows customer service is going to tell you is to clean install. That's from my personal experience. I've seen that happen a lot. And every single problem was replied to, well, have you tried clean installing your Windows? Fuck you. Sorry. Fuck you, Microsoft. If you can't fix your own OS, maybe there's another OS that can help. Maybe. Okay, that's been me for today. I am happy that I've been able to create new content in some way or another, and I'll see you guys again soon. I hope I'll be able to make better content in the coming months, but we'll get there. We'll get there. It's just I have finals to finish. I have some shit to deal with. So without further ado, I'm Mustafa Gharib, and I will see you again in another piece of content that is hopefully more effortful than this one. Peace.